So today is Mr. G's first day of doggy day school. Gus is a little golden retriever puppy. He and his friend Sadie, who is a boxer puppy, are here today. Next week we're hoping, not next week, on Thursday we're hoping to have Miss Pepper join as well. Pepper was due to join the full session as well, but then she ended up with I think, an infection, so a UTI or something. We're not sure exactly, but she's taking the day off to rest and get antibiotics. So with our handsome Mr. G, back to the stud muffin. One of my favorite ways to get the beauties warmed up is you'll see I'm doing these lovely find its. The benefit of doing some movement, especially with a youngster, is that a lot of times we tend to be the target. And the problem with that at times is then we become the thing they're honing in on with their mouths or with some excitement. So again, I'm not saying I don't want my puppies to come into my space and enjoy my company, but I want my puppy to start realizing that when he gets a little excited, he can choose other skills to do instead, which for me, I love movement behaviors, especially with youngsters or puppies that get really eager beaver or a little overwhelmed, because movement helps them feel less stuck or less trapped. And then at the same time, it gives this puppy some time to get comfortable in the environment. And then also I'm getting some energy out of him. So as he's wiggling around, he's practicing moving away from me. And when he comes and reorients to my little bubble and checks in, I'd go, yes, and I could toss him their little snack. So the benefit of getting your puppy to sort of practice this reorientation to you from the environment is this is, again, very helpful for working recalls down the road and for working sort of that, again, bringing them back into your space from other distractions or different parts of the environment. So right now, Mr. G is just working a couple little find its. Every once in a while, he doesn't always catch where they're going. Ready, find it. There he goes. So as he's getting cozy, I'm just going to go ahead and start moving around the environment. What I want to see him do is when he comes back to orient to my side or by my leg, I'm going to feed him for that little movement. So again, right here, I'd go yes and feed. And it's, again, in the beginning, more approximation, so it doesn't have to be perfect. The main goal is that we're feeding this reorientation from the environment back to you as the handler. So I'm creating, again, this buildup of value being near me versus the environment. So the puppy snacks that I was tossing earlier were actually a piece of his kibble. So that way, as I'm tossing snacks away, when he comes more into my bubble, he's actually getting a little bit of the higher value snacks. So some of the training treats, a little bit of some of that cheese you packed. So that way, Mr. G, as he's practicing, he starts to think maybe there's more fun or more value in coming into my space. Nice job. So right here, feed for that. So as we're doing a little bit with this movement, we might find too, after some movement, we might have to go to the restroom, but we'll see if we can get his attention, keep it locked and loaded for a few moments. Yes. So in the beginning, if your puppies are also piranhas, where they're eating up your fingers, make sure to feed flat palm. So I tend to put the food in my hand, cup it, and then feed with the puppy just able to only snag the snack. So this way, again, as he's learning, he's not using those teeth at times, which right now he's been very gentle, but sometimes your puppies, when they get excited or a little overwhelmed, the mouth becomes, again, its own little creature, and it's not always connected to the brain. So I feel, oh, he's already winded. So of course we did some lovely find its, so now he's a little bit tired. So if when you're working loose leash walking, I know we've practiced a little bit in class and we worked about it a little bit at the home front. Remember, loose leash walking should just be little bits at a time throughout your practice with him throughout the day. So if we're trying to go for those big boy, big girl walks, like I've mentioned in class with our beauties, that might be too big of a setup. Also, remember that if your puppy is struggling with stairs or getting in and out of a vehicle, it could be that, again, remember their joints and their ligaments are not fully developed. Like right now, there's a lot of space between his bones and his next little bone. And because of also his depth perception when he's little, he might be a little bit more nervous to go down the stairs versus up the stairs. Most puppies have an easier time. So if he's really struggling coming in and out of the vehicle, I would also avoid him jumping from higher places like the couch and things like that, or the bed, or even out of the vehicle, because a lot of times they're jumping onto either slick surfaces or onto hard surfaces. So sometimes your puppy, even though he's trying his darndest, he may at times jump out of the car and then either hurt himself or get a little bit spooked by the big jump. So I would recommend that when he's this little, either use a step stool or a ramp, or start helping him sort of come in and out of the vehicle while he's just so little. So because if your puppy is nervous and we kind of lure them out of the vehicle with a snack and then they topple out of the vehicle, then the next time we try to lure them again, they might think they're going to fall. So we want to be careful with how we're setting him up and how he's practicing so he doesn't feel that it's, again, going to be a little overwhelming. So right there, yes. So that's my positive interrupter. You could also warm up with these lovely kissy noises by, again, doing those lovely find its. And then from there, yes. And then feed for that engagement into your space. And again, we could send him away. He's like, where'd that darn snack go? And if he loses it, I'll just show him one a little closer. Nice. And right here, he says, lady, I stepped on it. Right there, yes. So even if you're not as fast to mark the behaviors, so remember, chewing them, sir. A marker word like the word yes lets your puppy know exactly when they did either the right behavior or skill, and you're letting them know that whatever they just did is what's going to give them their paycheck. So remember, every skill or behavior, view it as each one has a bank account, and if, let's say, they're not getting as many deposits into, let's say, loose leash walking as they are sitting, then our puppies might find more value in the sitting position than the loose leash walking. So I tend to keep, and he's like, lady, my snack got stuck in my mouth. So I like to keep the food typically on the same side as my puppy, get some engagement, and then while he's soft and next to me, feed there. Nice job, Mr. G. If, for example, your puppy's giving you some beautiful eye contact, you could also feed for that. But remember, loose leash walking doesn't always have to be eyeballs on you. It's not one of those heel positions. It can always transition into a more refined heel later. But for right now, it's just softness without pulling. And I know right now he has no gear on in the sense of the leash. So right now, I'm using my hand as a visual. So my handsome guy can hone in on my hand, take a few steps with me, and then feed from there. She's doing a really nice job. Ready? So right there, kissy noise if I lose the handsome man. Take a few little steps. I'm going to feed him for that lovely little kiss noise that he responded well to. Ready? Good job. Right there, nice. So even if you weren't going yes and marking these moments, he's still creating value in this response or behavior. Ready, Gus? Yeah, right there, nice name recognition. Because if, let's say, I wasn't giving him a pretty high rate of reinforcement for things he deems hard, you may find that you're not creating that really nice bank account for him for down the road. So when we go do loose leash walking with me and my dogs, I am not feeding every 3 seconds or every few steps. Maybe I'm feeding here and there every few moments for things I really enjoy. My dogs also get reinforced through the environment, so like going and sniffing and exploring and also playing. So it's not 24/7 food. One of my boys is actually much more toy-driven than he is even food-driven. So I tend to rotate through reinforcements that my puppy finds reinforcing. So remember, you can't decide what you want to use as a reinforcer because your puppy may not find it reinforcing to them. Chewing is optional, says Mr. G. So if, let's say, for example, you're like, okay, I'm going to just use, maybe kibble out on my walk. The problem with that is the puppy might find the environment so much more captivating and so much more reinforcing than, for example, the value of your kibble. So you do want to have a variety of little snacks, and you may decide, like as you're practicing, which items are higher value and which items are the medium and which might be really low for him. 2, if you're using the same trail mix like we mentioned in class, the problem there is as the day progresses for the class and while you're training, as your puppy gets more fatigued, the work can seem harder, but he's earning the same exact paycheck the whole entire class. So you may find that variety, just like with us, is really engaging and we enjoy change in our meals. So same thing for the handsome guy, having a little variety when practicing, really helpful. So right here, beautiful. I'm going to feed for that lovely back into my bubble. So another option too is, let's say, for example, you're working on this loose leash walking and your puppy gets a little distracted up in the head. This is where we'd also want to work on bringing the puppy into our space and working a little bit with the front. So ready? Oh, and we got a little bit of peepees. Sometimes, Mr. Handsome, I know, and this can be very common for some of the puppies, even though, again, I just changed my body language a little bit by leaning forward to do the front, he sometimes is a little bit unsure, and submissive urination is typically something that happens for youngsters when they're saying, I'm a little overwhelmed, or what you're doing, for example, I'm trying to show you that I mean you no harm. So a lot of times it's a puppy's way to say, please don't harm me, but I'm a little intimidated or a little flustered. It can also be paired with a lot of excitement, though typically that has some conflict to it, where they're excited, but they're a little apprehensive and a little bit overwhelmed. So if we are still getting a lot of submissive urination, I would gauge sort of like, so that was a little bit of my part where I maybe made him feel a little bit flustered. So me leaning down to try to do the front position, as I leaned over him, he maybe thought I was going to come and bombard him, and therefore he did a little bit of peeing. So don't worry if at times we have little accidents. Just like when we were little, there's going to be plenty of times where while you're learning something new, you may make mistakes or you may not always understand, especially coming from Dogville to Humanville. It's going to be a lot of different varieties of culture, again, differences, where what they tend to do when they're overwhelmed or too excited or let's say over eager will maybe vary compared to like the way we do certain things. So no big deal about the little potty. We'll clean that up in 2 seconds. But right now I'm just going to move around it and we won't go walking through it. So, but I'm again feeding to the side. He's like, look at all those weird things. So with Mr. G, if let's say moving into my body, like I lose him, I'm going to see if I can bring him into my space, feed for that. So I'm not going to hunch over as much, so it's not as overwhelming. And then we're going to continue on our little merry way. And again, you can feed, again, across your body if you're able to feed him. And what I mean by across the body is if he's on this side and I want to feed him, if I'm going to feed across my body, oh, there you go, find it, is I want it to happen still while he's on the side of my body. If by accident when I go to feed across my body and I feed him here, your puppy's going to think the place to be is in front of your feet, and then you might trip or step on him or get tied up on the gear. Nice job, sir. So we normally want to, again, feed for while he's by the side of the leg, because then we're creating the value. And right now, if I'm using my hand to lure him, he's getting very tired from doing all these lovely loop-de-loops. So, but back to that orientation to you is where you're feeding him also has value. And what I mean by that is when he's being fed, it should either be in the position or around something, or you're capturing that moment where he's still performing the skill. So if let's say, for example, I go ahead and he's like, hold on, lady, there's some crumbs here. If I feed him here by my leg, this becomes the place where the good stuff happens. If by accident my timing is off and I'm feeding him as he cuts in front of me, he might start to think that being in the front of my legs is what I want. So having different cues, like we could go into a little front and feed him for coming into the front of my body, then that would be one option. So again, we could go again, ready, front, and feed for that. Ready, front. Nice. Eventually your fronts will turn into come to the front of my body and maybe offer a sit and a little check-in. For right now, if it's just moving and reorienting back to you, perfectly fine. So when practicing with Mr. G, I know it seems like right now all you're doing is, again, feeding your gorgeous guy. But remember that if we're trying to create long-lasting behavior for down the road, we want to start off like the Coke or the snack machine, where every time you put in your dollar, you get your snack. Because if you put in your dollar and you get nothing in return, the problem there is it starts to create a moment where they may not want to come back to that machine to try again. Obviously, as things become more fluid and more, again, reliable, we would start to become more like the slot machine, where you turn your puppy into a little gambler and they don't always know when they're going to win big, little, or nothing at all. So, but that will keep them coming for seconds, thirds, and forever. So intermittent reinforcement down the road, really crucial, but we still want to reinforce, especially in the beginning, for as your puppy's learning, every time they're doing the appropriate thing. This is where, though, remember, you can vary the food or snacks that you're using, so it's not always super high items. So he just went to go get a little drink of water, and the fact that he came and chose to come near me again from the environment would be a moment I'm going to feed him for that check-in. So nice job, Mr. G. So we'll give him probably a little break from this loose leash walking without equipment, and then I want to work a little bit with his maybe place or bed behavior, going to a target, and working a little bit with the beginning stages of what we consider more of a stay behavior too. So right now I'm just going to give him a couple little tidbits for doing such a good job coming into my space, and we'll give Mr. G a little breather.